Hi there, my name's Alex and I run the Autism Acceptance page on Facebook. Obviously, if you're seeing this on Facebook, you will know that. If you're seeing it on YouTube, I will drop a link to my Facebook page in the comments so you can go out and check it out. I cover a wide range of stuff from a neurodiversity standpoint, and this video will actually mean more to people on my Facebook page because it's more opening up about myself, which I haven't really done much. I've touched on things. I was slapped with the label PDA back in the 1980s, early 1980s by Elizabeth Newson. A lot of people have heard of Elizabeth Newson. And so what is PDA? PDA stands for pathological demand avoidance. Although a lot of people call it pervasive drive for autonomy now, which kind of is, because it's about an aversion to basically being affected and conformity, aversion to following rules, and being controlled, sort of thing. I am actually now, I'm quite for the rules. I sort of in work, I do sort of, there is a bit wiggle room, we all have, but there are certain things that I am very rigid on the rules for. And the reason is because for me, because if I don't follow the rules, then I kind of feel in limbo. If something happens, if I do something wrong, then I'm going to face the consequences. A lot of it is being scared of the consequences. But sometimes you don't have control over whether you follow the rules or not. So say you're in a situation in work or when you're in school. I got this a lot in school. At work I can usually kind of like sort around it actually. But in school I get a teacher would tell me to do something or the way to do something, and then another teacher would say something else, and I'd be like, well, Miss so-and-so said to do it this way, and they're like, well, I'm telling you to do it this way, and you just don't know what to do, because if you do it their way, then, if you do it what the second person says, then you're going against what the first person told you to do, and if you're going against, if you do what the first person said, you're going against what the second person said. Now, for me, I'm very kind of more kind of the first person that tells me something is the person that I follow. I find it, I'm getting better now, but I find it hard to, like in work or when I was in college or school, you'd have teachers and certain tutors, whatever, and if somebody else came in and tried to tell you what to do, my attitude is like, you're not my boss. You're not say Sharon is my supervisor. They're all made up names. And Rose comes and says, we'll do this, and it's not what Sharon told me to do. Rose is just an acting as a supervisor or a lower supervisor than Sharon. I'm like, no, why? Now I will do it, but I'm constantly worrying about it. If somebody cuts corners or just does something and I don't know how that's going to be fixed, then I'll say something. And I've got into trouble with supervisors before where I said, oh, you can't do that because this is going to happen, and like, you're telling me how to do my job. So I mean, I guess we all get that, but the thing with PDA is it's an anxiety. Um, it can look like a conduct disorder, like you're willfully fighting against authority. And where I have willfully fought against authority for various reasons, including the fact that I'm being bullied, and they're not doing anything about it, it's it's more of an anxiety thing. Um, I'm used to my pattern, and if anything else, like I said, I'm better. I'm getting better now, but I'm used to my pattern, and if anything else deviates from that pattern or breaks it, then shit, what do I do now? And that can come off as me being rude or sharp or, you know, panicking. It's a panic reaction has sometimes been um, mistaken for back talk, and especially as a child. And then I've got into trouble, and it's just like you end up hating yourself, and it just becomes one big power struggle with authority. And that's also a thing. I'm more scared of authority now, and I guess high authority I've always been scared of, but I've always questioned authority. It's like, what gives you the right to be boss over me? When I was a child, I struggled with the idea that grown-ups are in charge, because what right is a grown-up? We're equals. What right have you got to tell me what to do? We negotiate. But it doesn't work like that. And what you want to be negotiating, their reactions, or the way I see it, you're trying to negotiate, they're trying to put their foot down and control things, and then it's just a power struggle. And I used to look at things. I remember being bullied in school, and the teachers weren't doing anything, and I just thought, I can't handle this. I was going into school every day unhappy. The bullying was, I had balance and coordination issues, highly phobic. When we used to do PE, physical exercise, um, you know, um, in school, like sports, and we had like apparatus that we had to climb and walk across and jump off and everything. And I've got crap balance and coordination. I'm scared of everything. And I used to have this like classroom assistant that would, help me, and she'd hold my hand. They'd hold my hand, or let me hold their hands while walking across the beam, or come and stand behind me, make sure I didn't fall off when I was climbing over the apparatus, the ladders and stuff like that. And balance and coordination. I couldn't catch a ball, and playing sports and stuff. It was terrible because I was the last to be picked for teams, and I just hated it. I hated doing the sports. You had to do it, and people would be like, the teacher would pick me. Everybody else would be picked, and then I'd be standing there, and no one would want me. So the teacher would assign me a group, and they'd all be like, "Oh God, we've got to take her." Yeah, and that was horrible. because of my balance and coordination issues, I was called spastic. Um, I have a lazy eye as well. I have no issues with my sight. It just looks as if some people have seen me and said that I look, am I partially sighted or visually impaired? I'm not. It's just because of my lazy eye, I think, and perhaps sometimes the way I might, struggle with coordinating things. Um, I was late being able to tie my shoelaces as a child. I've never really been able to swim. Again, that is a lot of coordination issues. It's not coordination issues. That was down to fear, um, and I had a couple of teachers push me to do things. I had a babysitter once who she took me swimming. My mum went mad. She took me swimming, and I was scared of the water. Mum used to go swimming with me sometimes, and she'd hold my hands. I couldn't stand anyone putting their hand under my stomach. And then like when you're teaching a child, so they'll put their hand under their chest and under the stomach to kind of support them. That made me feel off balance, and so my mum used to let me hold her hands, and then she'd kind of like try and let go with one hand, and then I'd end up like holding her finger and trying to do it like that. And I went for swimming lessons, and the swimming teacher was very patient with me, and eventually I managed to do like the 10 meter, get my 10 meter swimming badge, swimming up the shallow end, but I never got past that. But I do remember I went to America with my dad, and we stayed there for quite a while, a few weeks, and we stayed at a friend of his house, and they had a pool. It was about 10 meters long, and I was in the pool every day, and I was just left to my own devices. And I was swimming up and down. I was trying to. At one point, I was swimming up and down the shallow end, backwards and forwards, and I think I managed to do like 100 laps or something, you know, back and forth in the shallow end. And I thought, okay, I'll give it a go. So I walked up as far as I could along this side of the pool, holding on. And then I realised where I got to a stage where I couldn't stand up. It was like up to there on me. And I couldn't, if I'd gone any further, I couldn't stand up. And I looked at it, and it was only a few, it was about a foot or a metre, if that, from there to the side of the deep end, the edge of the deep end. And I thought, I've just done back and forth, I've just done 100 widths. I can try and do a length and just quickly swim there. And I've turned around without putting my feet down in the shallow end. So I did that, and I was able to swim up and down the whole length of the pool. Let's say it was only a small pool in America, in somebody's backyard, backyard pool. But yeah, I was able to do that. I don't know if I haven't been swimming for ages. I don't know if I'll be able to do that now. But just being able to be in control myself helped me to do that. But I've heard a lot about teaching autistic people to swim, and whether they're scared or not. Doesn't matter if they have to learn to do it, and you have to force them. I want to tell you something. First of all, that babysitter did to me, that affected me. I was terrified of. I felt really out of control, swimming on my back, and I remember she put me on my back, and she was holding me, and I started to panic, and I started struggling to get away from her, and then I realised that if I did, she was the only thing, I thought, Well, I trust her enough to not to literally make me drown, not to, deliberately drown me. But if I do, like, manage to get away from her and I end up going under the water, she's the only thing stopping me from going underwater. So I stopped struggling and complied, but I was terrified. And that stayed with me, and affected my confidence. So, and I still can't swim. So that stuff doesn't help. All it does is traumatize. If you have an autistic, I get it, that if your child goes near water when you're not around, if they elope, but it's not going to work. You have a low functioning or high support needs person, and they elope. Will you try to stay with them anyway? They may elope, but you are not going to teach them anything by forcing them. That is not going to help. I can tell you from experience that being forced to do something, I once had, when with that babysitter, when she was holding me on my back, and I started struggling, and she actually at one point she pushed me underwater just for a second, and to tell me that, and then it says that that's what happens when you kind of, fight in the water. And yeah, it was horrible, very, very traumatic. Didn't help at all. So that's not something to do to anyone. It's abuse. My mum went nuts, by the way. Yeah. So another thing that kind of affects me is, or used to affect me, is short-term memory. I've always been terrible at working out maths stuff. And what would happen is I'd be working something out, and I'd start partly work it out, and I'd come to the conclusion to answer part of it, so then I could do the maths for the other part of the same question. But as I was trying to work out the same question, I'd forget the answer or how I'd worked out that, and it would just all get confusing. I don't do confusion. Information overload just really throws me, and I will just freeze. I have to be given, I'll say, step by step. The easiest way I learn now, I think, is I remember doing a job or starting a job, and they were showing us how to use something, how to do the job. And they said, we're just going to show you everything. You're not going to remember straight, or there's a lot to know. You're not going to take it all in, but it's surprising what you will take in. And it was, because they repeated and repeated the pattern. And when they showed us the second time, when they showed me the second time, it was like, yeah, this is slightly familiar, but I still can't do it on my own. And then it's a little bit more familiar, and then I got to be able to do little bits, and then I watched them do it, and eventually it clicked. But if you show me how to do something step by step, that's fine, but I'm trying to work out the logic behind it. So yes, I will follow your steps, but if you want me to learn the process, then the best way to do it is to show me the whole thing like they did in that job, and then break it into steps. But then at the back of my mind, like I said, you know more than you think you're taking in, and you can recall, or certainly for me, I can recall the later information, be triggered um, some of information by giving but can be triggered from being given part of an information to other parts of that information. So and also linking things. I don't do random rote. I've never been able to reel off my times tables, or you say 6 6s. I'm like, my maths is rubbish anyway. I'm like, okay, so I know 5 6s is 30. So 6 6 plus that is 36. So 6 6s is 36. But it's supposed to be, you're supposed to know it, but I'm having to work it out from, something like that. I'll always work out something from either my 2 times table, my 5 times table, or my 10 times table to work out the other, adding and then add on from the others or take away from the others. So I've got my little systems of learning, and also putting substance to things. I remember going to Tenerife with my dad, and we were learning Spanish, and there was this phrase book, and it translated Spanish words into English, but it also gave a little link to the Spanish word, to link the Spanish word to the English word. So for instance, gato is cat. So the book says, imagine a cat eating a chocolate gatto. So then I had this mental picture in my mind of a cat on the worktop eating a chocolate gatto. Pan is bread. So imagine doing fried bread in a pan. You get the gist, and that's how I learned, being able to make those substance links. So yeah, I had all these kind of sorts of get-arounds and stuff. I'm not very good on somewhere I went to school. They used to have these. You'd have to have a handrail now for health and safety, but it's concrete steps going down. And there's a wall either side, and I used to go down the steps, like up and down the steps, hanging onto the wall, sort of side on, hanging onto the wall. I don't like heights anyway, but my balance and coordination, and also fear as well of those things, fear of falling. What people forget is that emotions are physical sensations, and physical sensations are distractions. Like any other sensory overload, it's a distraction. So you can be distracted by the physical sensation of your emotional states. And also what I can do is, and I think we can all do this, but I can hyper focus on the sensation of my physical states to kind of give me a drug-like effect, like a biochemical sedation. So if I'm worked up, if I'm getting frustrated and angry, or I will, start off like ranting or whatever, and then I can just it's almost like sensory mindfulness. I'll tune into the physical sensation of, say, my frustration, which frustration is, if I was to describe it, it'd be like a sweet prickly sensation. So I tune into that, and that will be all absorbing. So you can do that with good feelings as well. Excitement. I'd use sensory cross-referencing. So excitement would be like, if excitement was taste, it would be something like sherbet. but then so would fear. And you could just lose yourself in it. If I'm, say if I'm frustrated, again, you tune into the physical sensation of my emotional state. So I'll go from, blowing up to zen. And over the years, I've learnt to channel that, kind of like using it. I call it the DJ's mixing box effect, because when you feel a sensation, internal sensation, it affects the way you visualize things on the outside. Some people may completely lose the cognition and the significance of it all. But for me, it puts a different vibe onto the situation. So the only way I can describe it is like a DJ's mixing board playing a song through the mixer. You can recognise the song. The tune is there, but it's just played in a different genre, a different vibe. And that's through the biochemical sensations of my emotional states. I can be drugged by that, but it's various degrees of drunkenness, I suppose, from my biochemical sensations. So I can be at a stage where I'm getting really drunk off it, but I'm functional, and I can kind of use the DJ's mixer effect to see the situation, see the frame of the situation, see act normal in the situation. In a sense, I may be, if I'm using this biochemical sedation, I might be a little bit more kind of lethargic, a little bit less. I respond, but a little bit. It's kind of more like, I suppose to the outside, I'd be, she's got her mind elsewhere. She look, a little bit vacant, but yeah. So that is part of my story, my struggle in a way. I want to just mention something else quickly. Even issues with effective empathy. So if I saw somebody in pain, and still now it's horrible, and I will sometimes use that biochemical sedation thing to sort of stop myself, to keep myself calm, to stop myself going into overload. Otherwise I just get really angry on their behalf. I just, blow up. But sensory mindfulness, biochemical sedation calms me down. Sometimes it can be a buzz. I call it, there's different types of ways to do it. There's self-initiated biochemical sedation, and you do it for a reason. And sometimes it's like trying to dare exposure. I've got a love-hate relationship with affection, and sometimes I will do that, tune into that kind of sensations that I get, these squirmy sensation. I get the kind of fuzzy, headed sensation I get when, from being cuddled or cuddling, and I will use that to kind of biochemically sedate and be able to do it, which may be something I want to do, cuddling someone through that filter. Makes it easier and less raw than, because if I didn't, I'd just be pushing back. Um, I guess that's just like getting drunk without the alcohol. Um, but it kind of helps the flood, it helps flow the flood, the excessive tsunami of sensation that's coming in on me, and making life in some situations uncomfortable. So yeah, that's a little bit about me, different aspects. Like I said, covered the balance and coordination, short-term memory, and this kind of the biochemical channeling thing. Um, but yeah, I'm stronger than my struggles. I've overcome issues, um, and I'm doing all right now. I'm still working on my self-confidence, which I've been doing for a while, but I'm better than I was, and that's I'm here on this page, the autism acceptance page, wanting to reach out to other people who are struggling in similar situations, and um, to help them with using my understanding. I don't show this. I don't speak about this in my life. There's some people that know, most people don't. So I don't involve my personal Facebook page with the autism acceptance page for that reason. But yeah, I I felt that something I could do. I wanted to help autistic people. I didn't want to out myself to my family that didn't know, my friends, the people around me, my colleagues, or anyone. No one knows, say apart from certain family members. I kind of touched on it a little bit with one friend when we were both drinking, but I don't think, that was like ages ago. I don't think that's still, sunk in now. But yeah, so I wanted to do something to help people. If I was looking to work with autistic people, and I've thought about that in the past, but it's all ABA based, and all the official stuff is, and I remember going to, my mum had a friend ages ago her son was autistic, and I went with her to her house to see this is before I knew what ABA was, to see what they did, and they were doing ABA, and it just didn't feel right to me. Someone said something to him in the car, saying something about, mistook that he'd take things literally. We're going to a party. So then we got to his house, and then he started kicking and screaming, and it's horrible. His mum got him out of the car, took his hand and carried him up and dragged him up the steps to his house. He actually wasn't that bad. Once she got him out the car, she kind of ran with him. He wasn't pleased, but he wasn't sort of like thrashing and fighting, and he was trying to resist a little bit, but yeah, it wasn't nice. They took him into the house. The ABA therapist came out. He took him into a room, and then I remember hearing him cry, the little boy cry. I don't know if he was being restrained then, but I didn't actually see him being restrained. But then I was sat on the ABA thing, and it didn't sit easy to me. And so he kept coming up to me, and I had wearing this shirt or whatever with these shiny buttons, and he was attracted to my buttons, and I was letting him play with that. And then afterwards, I got told that he was distracted. That my presence there made him distracted, and I was like, I felt guilty at first, but now I think, well, fuck you, because he was gravitating to me. I'm glad I distracted him from the pain that he was in. And that just made me think even more that I wanted to help people. I remember doing a course, and we were, something to do with, nursery and classroom assistance, whatever. And they did a thing touched on autism. This was in the late 1990s. We got handed, how can you just touch on autism to start with? And we got handed a booklet on autism describing it as mind blindness. And then we watched this horrific video. I nearly walked out. It's called holding therapy. And I did look into that, and it's awful. Holding and hug therapy. The idea is that autism, it causes attachment disorders, and you have to forcibly hug the child, no matter how much they struggle and fight to get away from you. Force eye contact. There's different ways of doing it. You can shout insults and be horrible, or you can be kind of reassuring. You can be coercing them, but the actual holding is coercing. But you can be actively coercing them to the point of sometimes pinching them or insulting them while holding them and riling them up for anger, and they're fighting and struggling, and oh god, and the idea is to, no matter how hard they try to get away, you hold on to them no matter what they do. I've heard of them saying about a child biting and throwing up, wetting themselves, and you're not supposed to let them go until you reach a resolution. So it's a cycle of 3 stages in this holding therapy, apparently. Rage, resolution, and catharsis. That is fucking bullcrap. I am so angry talking about this. The catharsis is not catharsis. It is the fact that they have fought and struggled and fought and struggled and kicked and screamed and kicked and screamed and bitten and scratched and done everything and thrown up and defecated and weed themselves and done everything they can to dissociate, but you're supposed to force them back into focus. No, I can't talk about this anymore. I'm getting too angry. I'm getting too worked up. But that was what we watched in that course. I don't know how I stopped myself from walking out. I don't know how I stopped myself from punching the fucking table, and but yeah, This is why I do what I do, because there's so much abuse and so much ignorance about autism and autistic people, and I want to help them. I want to help put it straight. Luckily, I never went through any of that, and I wasn't, that impaired. I was always embarrassed as well. Why can't I be like the other kids? Why can't I be normal? But what's normal? What the effing hell is normal? Normal is what capitalist society, what manufacturers, what salespeople want us to be. Because normal sells, because it's about money. And stigma sells. You stigmatize people and you push them out of society, you push them out of, if you can't make money from them, if you can't make money off them, you push them aside. And there's the ABA industry, the autism industries, they make money, they make big bucks, a lot of the time out of abusing children. That's why Autism Speaks is so awful, because they're interested, they make their money from scaremongering. They make their money from painting autistic people as less than human, as a tragedy. I'm not going to go into this now, but I believe people are more than their autism. I don't believe in all this kind of like, you are your autism, my autism is fabulous, and there's no, you can't ever grow out of your autism. Autism is fickle, and it's a